Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I wanna thank you all for being here today. My name is Ginna Christensen, and I am a business and leadership coach, and want to, give a big thank you to the D&D building and Jared for, making this possible for us, because we feel like this information we have to share today is just extraordinarily valuable. So, as you know, we're going to be talking about attracting and creating your ideal client. And I want to really encourage you as we go through this talk to use your chat box, because I'm going to be posing a bunch of questions, and we really would love to have this be a very interactive kind of conversation. So use it to ask questions, but also, use it to answer the ones we pose. So I want to start out by asking you, again, these are some questions that were in I think the actual invitation. How many of you here today have struggled with a client that was not a right fit? How many of you have seen red flags, when interviewing a client and moved forward anyway? And how many of you have started out a project, with someone in a good relationship, and then sort of have that deteriorate, as you go along? And then my last question is, what would change for you and your business if you could steer clear of these kind of scenarios? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And before we really jump into the meat of this conversation, I want to introduce my fabulous co-host here today, Kathleen Franza. Kathleen is the founder and owner of both KMH Design and KMH Home. And Kathleen, perhaps if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about, yourself and your business with us, and maybe talk a little bit about how we came to work together.
Okay. So Kathleen Franza, owner of KMH Design and recent KMH Home, which is our retail shop, which actually just came into fruition a little less than 3 years ago. But I've been doing interior design work in residential and some commercial projects for over 20 years in the Jacksonville area. We are located out at the beaches, which we love, and we are in a great little town center, which has been really supportive through all the years, and certainly with the retail shop now. But we, as I said, have been doing this for 20 years, and it sort of dawned on me one day that I've never really had any business coaching. I haven't had any guidance. I've kind of just did it all on my own. I thought I was making all sorts of wise decisions, but I was still struggling with a lot of things, and thinking that I would have learned a lot of lessons over the years, which I hadn't. An email came across just very random, I think. I don't know how Ginna's email came to us, but we're glad that it did, because it stopped us in our tracks. And she just said in that email everything that I thought, like, wow, yeah, these things need to happen. It's time. So we emailed back to her, and we've been working with her for almost a year now. And it has been just an eye-opening experience. It has helped us through not only in the design, but in the retail shop. It helped us in so many ways. So today, the one of the very first things she did with us was, how are you feeling about your clients, and how do you, can you actually describe an ideal client? And so anyway, that was one of our first things. And we're still at it with her. We're still learning. So
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I'm sure we have people that are sort of still signing on as we're going through here. So, I just want to recap. Kathleen and I are talking today about attracting and creating your ideal client. My name is Ginna Christensen, and I am a business and leadership coach. And as Kathleen said, she is a designer, a business owner, and now a retailer. So, I want to talk a little bit about this ideal client exercise because it's funny. I do this really with all of my clients. And, you know, many of them, after we finish, will admit to me that when I first tell them that we're going to do an ideal client exercise, that they roll their eyes, because they're like, oh my God, you're really going to make us do this again. We've done it before. We don't understand how it helps us. It hasn't helped us in the past, and all that. So I wonder, Kathleen, if you remember when I first mentioned that we were going to do this exercise, like what your reaction was.
Yeah, well, it was like, okay, that sounds right. And why did we not really think about that? We're always complaining every day about our clients, but never really sat down to figure out what were the problems with them, and to define and get more clarity on, that if to stop us from complaining every day, what was it that we needed to do? And that was to try and find some more ideal clients. So anyway, we were like, we were on board. We were like, good, but we were like, we should have thought of that a long time ago.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the funny thing about coaching. And I feel like the work that I do, I mean, part of the time, when we're talking about issues, I feel like, I hear the answers coming out of my mouth, right? And they sound so simple, right? Just like as we're going to walk through this exercise, you're going to see how simple it is. But simple doesn't mean it's easy. And simple doesn't mean, as you said, Kathleen, that it is something that we automatically do. So, I think it is sort of a really valuable thing. So we're going to jump in and walk you guys through what this exercise looks like now. So typically what I do is I start off this exercise by asking my clients to think of 1 to 3 of the worst clients that they've ever had. Okay. And then I want you to get them really clear in your mind. And then I ask them, what was it about those particular clients that made working with them so difficult? So Kathleen, would you mind sharing with us some of your worst client experiences?
Sure. Yeah, I got my cheat sheet here, and there was a whole lot of things we put underneath that, but I'm going to keep it short. So at the start, negotiation of our fees. That was a big thing. Says to us a lack of trust and intention. No timeline guide. That said to us uncertainty of commitment to the project. If we took on the project, there was lack of customers' response and communication to requests and decisions. Terrible decision. So many of them hate to make decisions, which of course hold up your whole project. Clients' continual rehashing of covered topics and already confirmed decisions. Doubtful, did we make the right decision? A lot of extra time being spent and energies trying to keep the ball rolling, trying to keep the project moving, and feeling good about where we're going. So those are just a few of the worst client attributes.
Yeah, so I want to check in with everyone who is with us here and kind of put the same question out to you. Like, what do you resonate with, from what Kathleen shared? Have you guys experienced this, or what have been some of your major pain points? What have been the things about those worst clients of yours that made working with them so difficult? Go ahead and throw your comments up in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that as you do that. So the next step, right, is like, now that we've identified all these things about the client that made working with them so hard, the next question is, and I know you remember this, Kathleen, is how did that affect the way you showed up for the client and the project? So would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, definitely. Lost momentum due to time lapses between meetings, which meant a lot of extra time catching up and going over our past notes, figuring out where we left off. We felt like we were losing control of design direction due to the client's lack of engagement and their indecisions. We lost enthusiasm for the project. The energy was low, and it just seemed every time we were going to have a meeting or had to have a decision made, it was painful. It really affected our energy level and our engagement, to stay, interested in the project. So yeah, it was not a good way for us to show up for any project.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I do hear over and over again from designers is how disruptive it can be to a project when you lose momentum. It's almost like starting all over, from scratch. And it really affects, I mean, here's the thing to really think about is like, what effect does that have on, your profitability, and effectiveness? And we're getting some comments here. So I just want to share some of the things that people are putting out there in terms of difficulty they've had with their clients, difficulty in getting paid, as the progressed. I mean, definitely heard that one before. Clients being nitpicky about everything, which to me, that kind of speaks back to what you were saying earlier, Kathleen, about trust. There's not that trusting in the designer if they're being so nitpicky. Husband and wife never being on the same page. Oh my God, I can't even imagine what that must be like, right? Here's another one. Clients expecting me to work outside of the scope of the project. That is a really big one. So guys, again, as we're going through this, please feel free to share too. So how did those things that you mentioned, how did it affect the way you showed up to the project? Just like Kathleen just shared. So Kathleen, now that, you felt like you had the loss of control, momentum's gone, you've lost interest really, or excitement for the project.
Mm-hmm.
How did that, what were then the results? What happened in the end?
Well, a lot of, insecurity on our part. We were unsure of the owner's final thoughts on how the project turned out. That communication breakdown. Concerned actually about the feelings on our part that it was not our best work. And we do not like to be out there not doing what we love and doing it as great as we can. We were unsure of the contractor's take on our professional skills. And, contractors are a really good source for us. I mean, we recommend one another all the time, and, just so much uncertainty of how we left things with people. And actually lack of enthusiasm to even photograph it for our website, which is a really big, criteria, which we'll get to later, as to, we got to all think about that. It is part of why we do what we do, and it's social, media is so important, and we want to be proud, to be able to show what we've done and how wonderful and great it turned out. So, it's just total uncertainty and just sort of, just not feeling like we did the best that we could have done, or we weren't allowed to. So yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find that I don't want to say all, but many designers have in common is that this work is really yes, it's about creating pretty spaces, but really what it's about is creating a lifestyle, for people to have a better life. I know we've talked about, very frequently, Kathleen, how sort of your mission is really, all about creating ease, for your clients, and this ease of living. And so if you're not able to actually do your best work, then your client really isn't getting from you your best, they're not getting your best. And that is definitely one thing, I hear over and over again, when there is this sort of mismatch, the client just doesn't get the best of us. Another thing you talked about was like not being sure if the client really loved the work or not. So I imagine that means you're not getting referrals. And so much of this business is all about, referrals. And, the other big one, no photography. So guys, I want to pose this question to all of you here. What were the results, with these, 1 to 3 of your worst clients in mind? What was sort of the result? I see a new comment here. I have a client that has been wonderful, but question why I tipped all of the delivery people. I asked her to remind me to reimburse, but because she says she never tips anybody. Okay, that's really interesting. So I want you to keep that in mind as we continue to go through this exercise, because that sounds like something that is, Jane, that this is something that's out of alignment. One of the things that I talk about with my clients is, like, you want to be attracting people who share your values. So, I just alluded to something that's a major value for Kathleen, which is, creating this ease of living. If people don't appreciate what it is that you have to offer, things just they're just not going to go well. And I saw, Jane, it looked like you walked away from the project. I mean, that's another thing, a result that I hear happens over and over again. The designer quits or they get fired, right? When they say yes to the wrong client. So the purpose of really focusing first on the worst client, really gives you a clear picture of what saying yes to the people that are not a good fit for you really has on your business. Because I think this is the thing that small business owners don't think about enough. I know that sometimes, and this can be very true, especially when you start, your design business, that you're just taking whatever projects come to you because, you need money coming in the door. But at some point, I've also heard, as a result of working with a client that's not a right fit, that designers have actually lost money. They didn't get paid the final invoice. They wound up, just like you said, Kathleen, that you lost interest and didn't photograph, the final projects. Some of the designers just get so fed up, they don't even send the last invoice. They're like, I just don't even want a deal. So, there really is, a cost here that I just want everyone to be aware of. Does that make sense to everybody? And do you have any questions before we sort of move on to the next phase, which is where we start focusing on the ideal client, the good parts? I'll keep my eye on the chat box for any questions, but we'll go ahead and start sort of moving forward into the next phase of what this exercise looks like. So now we're really going to focus on your 3 to 5 best clients that you've ever had. Okay, so I want you to just take a minute, get those people clear in your head, really think about who they were, what it was like, how it felt to work with them. And now I want you to make a list, throw it in the chat box. Kathleen is going to share with us what it was about them that made working with them so successful. So Kathleen, let's hear some of your top ones.
Okay, they understood from the beginning the value that we brought to the project. They were engaged in asking questions. They relied on our expertise and knowledge and guidance. They viewed everyone involved as a team. That means a lot to us. A team that would work together, build a relationship.
Okay, everybody, I don't know if I'm the only one having a technical difficulty, but Kathleen has frozen. Can you guys hear me? Okay, it looks like Kathleen is frozen. So we'll kind of wait for her to come back on, but would love to hear more from you guys. I saw in the chat box, trust was a really big thing. They knew I was 100% about customer service. Yeah. Let's see. Trust. They respected me and my resources. Yeah. So these are some really common things that come up. And I will tell you that in the work that I've done over the years, trust is the number one ingredient that I hear over and over again that is needed when creating a really successful client designer relationship. Yeah, we've got some more here. Friendly, respectful, wants to succeed. Yes, while gaining value from us. Diversity. Great, great. Thanks you guys so much for sharing. You know, if you guys have any questions, since it looks like we lost Kathleen. If you guys have any questions that you want to, how can we have them trust us? Any guidelines? Okay. I love this question. Okay, so really how I advise my clients to really think about this, there are a couple of ways. One is really understanding first who this client is, right? And as we continue to go through this exercise, we're going to actually show you how to create a list of criteria, you know, so that you have sort of a set of rules for yourself, so you know who to say yes and who to say no to. Okay, but in terms of gaining trust, I'm going to give you two pieces of information that you can start before you even, you know, have your first phone call with a client. And the first is, again, really know what your company values are. You know, I suggest you identify 5 and really understand and define what those mean to you, and that you share those and share them often in all of your marketing materials, through social media, on your clearly on your website, you know, any email marketing you have going on. So I mentioned earlier, a huge value for Kathleen is really all about creating an ease of living. So, you know, she talks about that frequently and what exactly that means, right? Because she wants to attract clients, again, that are going to appreciate that. The second way that you can build trust with a client, again, before you ever meet them, is to, in your marketing materials, take your sort of audience on a journey from, Kathleen is back, from problem to solution. So let's just say, for example, you have a client, they moved into an older home that has limited storage space and closets, right? And so part of the solution you had to create was like, how are we going to create more storage, you know, and still keep this, you know, the integrity of the home intact and all of that. And so you tell that story, and you tell that story over and over again. And how that gains trust is when people in your audience, you know, identify, oh my God, we have the same problem. And then they see that you've created a solution, they know you can help them. Okay. So Kathleen, she's back. Can you hear me? She can't hear me yet. Okay. Looking at, what are we identifying 5 of? Okay, guys, we're going to create a list of 5 pieces of criteria that are going to serve as sort of your ground rules for who to say yes and who to say no to. And so this means what clients you're going to hire and say yes and no to. So I see that Kathleen is still, you know, trying to sign back on. So I'm going to go ahead and take you to the next part of the exercise, which is, now that we've talked about, you know, what made working with those ideal clients, you know, what was it about them that made it so successful? You know, a lot of you really mentioned trust. They trust your vision. They trust your judgment. They believe in your value. They're coachable. You know, they go with the flow in the process. They love artful expression, etc. Okay, you have that client. Now I want you to think about, and again, throw up in the chat box, how did those qualities affect the way you showed up for the client and the project. Okay. Yes, we as designers should be interviewing the client as much as they are interviewing us. Absolutely correct, Hope. Bravo to you. That's what this exercise is all about, to help you really identify. And one of the things we're going to talk about as well is, once you have your 5 pieces of criteria, we're going to show you how you can create interview questions to kind of, reveal if these people are a right fit for you or not. Okay, I'm seeing from Jim and Kelly, having this ideal client allowed me to bring my best creativity. I see Kathleen is still trying to sign on. Sorry so much, you guys, for the difficulty we're having, technology, Okay, I'm looking at some questions. You talked a little bit about new design businesses. How do you evaluate and attract potential clients, especially given a small portfolio? What is different versus more established businesses? Okay, I think that's a really interesting question. It's funny because I work with a variety of clients. As Kathleen mentioned, she's been in business for over 20 years. But I have clients who, are launching a business now, have been in the process of launching. And, the process is very much the same. It's really about understanding what your vision, your mission, your values are. And again, really having a good solid picture of your ideal client, and I've seen designers do everything. If you don't have a large portfolio, you just tap into your creativity, create vignettes, post images that really represent your design style, as well as your brand message, which is really about who you are and what you stand for. And like I mentioned earlier, Kathleen, one of the big things that she stands for is this idea of an ease of living. Kathleen, how are we doing? Can you hear us? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Maybe you're on mute. Let's see. By the way, I don't know if anybody is as obsessed with Kathleen's necklace as I am, but she does sell it at her store. Okay. Let's see. How did these positive qualities affect my project? High level of excitement and engagement from my side, proud results, better communication, designer and client on the same page, more enjoyable process for everyone involved, fun project, great testimonials, more recommendations. Okay, fabulous. So, one of the things I hear over and over again of how working with an ideal client really affects how you show up is people tend to be, they go above and beyond. They feel like they're so excited and they want to do so well for the client because the client is so fabulous that they're thinking about the project all the time. They're shopping for the project all the time, and they really do go above and beyond. And so, I know she's still trying to come on. Kathleen has to enable her audio, I guess. You're connecting now, Kathleen. Okay. It looks like for some reason you're having a hard time connecting to the audio. I'm not sure. But as soon as you come on, Kathleen, let us know you're there so we can hear you. So I'm going to go to the next step. Since you guys have done such a great job, sort of walking through the first 2 steps about your ideal client. So we've talked about how this affected the way you showed up. Now, what was then the result? Okay. So I know, one of you actually in your comments about how you showed up, talked a little bit about some of the results, or what was the result. Typically people get referrals. They may even do more projects with that client. They may become an ongoing client. They definitely get images. They usually have a happy client. sometimes, they get press. Okay, I'm just checking the questions. Okay. All right, so you guys, what have been the results for you in terms of, again, working with these clients who really value and appreciate, the work you do? Sense of pride. That's great. That's such an interesting comment, sense of pride, because I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough too is that it really helps to build your confidence, and the more confident you are in the work you do, the more you're able to show up as an expert. And it's funny, in talking about trust and how do we develop trust, when you're able to show up as an expert, right, for your client, it makes them feel comfortable because they know they're in the right hands. They know that they can trust you. I see Kathleen is coming back and she's on mute, but I'm thinking, let's see.
I'm here. Yay! Oh my gosh. Not too embarrassed. No.
Well, technology, we can't do it. We can't, it's not your fault.
So sorry.
No, we're getting some great participation from the audience.
Good.
I think you were talking about, again, like what were some of the things about your ideal clients that made working with them, so great? And I know you talked about, I think, value. They valued you and trusted. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that affected the way you showed up, Kathleen, for those projects?
Oh yeah, sure. So we were engaged from day one. It felt good. It felt right. We actually went above and beyond scope of work. We did a little bit more research, a little more design. Yep. We just were enjoying our time and weren't really, calculating hours so much. We gave it the extra. We checked in frequently at the project site, probably more than our once a week site meetings that we always insist upon. So we were just happy to kind of go and pop in, all the time to see how the progress was coming along. And we were excited to share progress on social media. We actually took the time to take some pictures and do some videos and then post them because we were having fun and we were enjoying it. And we're totally engaged throughout the whole part. So those were just
amazing.
Just feel good, right? I mean, that's what you do it for. You want to enjoy what you're doing every day, right? So,
while we were having some of the technical stuff, one of the things that I just started sharing, what I've heard from clients, and one of the items, you mentioned here, which is, you go above and beyond because you just want to be doing. I did see a question in the comments. How do you recognize a potential problem client? So the first step really is understanding what makes a client a potential problem. Okay, so that was step one of the exercise. And step two, which we're in right now, is really identifying and being clear about what your ideal client looks like. Okay, and we're going to go into the next couple of phases as well, because there are two more phases after that. So and somebody else commented, less clients is better. You don't need to have a million clients. It's better to have, a few really great clients instead of like a lot of clients with half of them being bad. So, which makes sense, especially when we see the kind of drain, that working with someone who's not a right fit has in our businesses. So, Kathleen, with having these people, that you are just showing up for, in the most amazing way, and you're so motivated and excited about the project, again, what was the outcome? What were the results?
Well, at this point, there was obviously confirmation from client and contractor that they were really happy with how the project turned out, which, we all wait for that moment when everybody just says, oh my God, I'm so happy. I love what we've done. We actually felt good about ourselves and what we achieved. So, it's not just a one-way street. We want to be really happy and really proud as well of everything we've done. We were excited to photograph it and put it up on the website. We couldn't stop talking about how great it turned out and how happy the client was. And we felt like we had built a really great relationship because word of mouth, other people talking about us. We knew that we were going to get good reviews. They were going to speak highly of us, and that goes a long way. I have done many advertising in my life, but I can tell you that most of my projects come from word of mouth. If one client was happy with me, they assure their friend that they're going to have the same experience. So, that's ultimate, for us. So.
Yeah. No, and what you're sharing is definitely what I hear over and over again. That the business, where do you get your business? It really comes from referrals. And I love that you mentioned, in these answers twice, the issue around contractors, because I know sometimes a contractor can also bring you business.
Oh yeah.
So
yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, shall we move on to creating a list of criteria? So guys, if you've been making your list with us, along as we've been going through this exercise, I really want you to take a look at what's standing out to you most about, again, the things that made working with your non-ideal clients that made it so difficult, as well as the things that your ideal clients brought to the table, and made working with them so great. And as you look through those, again, I want you to come up with 5 pieces of criteria that every client moving forward will need to have in order for you to say yes. So Kathleen, would you mind sharing with us the 5 bits of criteria that you've come up with?
Sure. First off, confirmation from my team that the project is not out of our comfort zone. Not everything that comes our way is really a good fit for us. So, we have to make sure that it is a good fit. That's just one of the criterias. The client views this as part of a team, that they are engaging us with the contractor, with the architect, and with themselves. That there's an established timeline for the project. It is really important for us to understand a potential start date and an end date. That can shift and change, there's no doubt about it. But when a client comes to us and they have no idea, then we don't know how long this project could potentially go on, which is therefore really hard to do a proposal. So we love when somebody has an estimated start date and when they're hoping to be in their home. So that's a wonderful piece of information for us. Client displays trust and is excited to be working with us, feeling like, we get good responses from them and saying, I've just heard so much wonderful things. I've seen your work. We're really, really excited to work with you, which then of course makes us excited to work with them. So when we hear those words, that's incredibly helpful. And in the end, is this a project that we can photograph and use on our website? I mean, that's one of the ultimate goals, is that we really want to make sure that we have continued content and being able to display, what we do, because we have gotten not only obviously a lot of jobs from referrals, but also because people have gone onto the website and said, oh my God, I really loved, people are visual. I really love this one house that you did. That's kind of what I'm imagining. So, the more content you have up there, and we tend to be a little bit more modern and clean and minimal, but we transition over to a little bit of some traditional things. So it, it speaks to them, and it makes it easier for the client to feel like, they can visually see, if they're working with us, that they're going to get something really wonderful. So the photographing the project is so important. So those are some of the criteria. Yeah.
Oh, great. So, you've kind of talked through a little bit, like what some of these things might sound like, when you were talking about, they're excited to work with us, you talked about what that kind of sounds like, and you talked a little bit too about, a client having an established timeline, sort of what that sounds like. We want to be moving in on X date, right? What other questions have you kind of added to your interview process to kind of reveal, if the client really does fit your ideal client criteria?
I think that for us, we ask a lot of questions. Obviously, it can start with, depending on where they are on the project. How do you select your architect? Do you have a set of plans even before they come for the interview? Do you have a contractor in mind, or do you have one set up? Where's your property? Have you done this before? Is this your first house? Or, what's your story? Why are you here in Jacksonville? Just trying to get a lot of information, kind of set them a little at ease that, we're interested in finding out as much as we can. And that's been, really helpful, because the answers are something that we record. We take notes when we do an interview with somebody, and it's for us to be able to later on with the team sit back and review those answers and say, is this how you read that? Is this how you read it? We ask, are you married? Do you have children? Are you, just as much information as we can to put the comments down so that we can all sort of sit around a little round table and actually ask, everybody's got a different opinion about people. So, my team will say, oof, no, this was not a good one. I got a bad feeling. And, I tend to be like, well, wait a minute, let's just really think about this. So, as many questions as you can ask. I don't think anything's off guard. So, asking all those questions and being able to get those, body language is another thing too, that, don't discount body language. Husbands are infamous for doing certain little things, that kind of, we're just never quite sure. So, it's just a lot of questions, I guess, and reviewing comments.
It's interesting. Somebody put up in the chat box, and please feel free to share some of the criteria you guys are coming up with as we're going through this exercise. But Carrie shared, one criteria is a decision from the client that the final decision is the final decision, right? So again, oh my gosh, just know that you are not the only one that deals with this issue, okay? And one of the things that I coach my clients around, again, in the very beginning, in this interview process that we're talking about with Kathleen right now, is to really ask the client, how do you make decisions? How are you at making decisions? Because some people are really quick, other people take a much longer time, right? And so understanding, like what Kathleen was saying, is this their first time, decorating a home? They're going to have probably more difficulty making decisions. But another key question, once they've answered, how are you at making decisions, you can also ask, how much information do you need to feel comfortable making a decision? Because again, that's going to differ from person to person. I talk about this all the time. Like, my husband and I are very different in the way we make decisions. I tend to be like really quick, don't need a ton of information. I just go with my gut, where he's definitely more methodical and needs more information. And so, just knowing that upfront and how to, prepare, I think is really helpful. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Kathleen?
One of the other things is I've discovered that, we use terminologies all the time when we're in an interview with a client. And so we realize that some of them, certainly who have never built a house before, or have done a major remodel, some of the words that are, really easy for us to kind of talk about is they're a little clueless on what the definition of it is. So we introduce into our interviews where we show them all of our documents. We'll pull out a binder. This is a typical binder we would use on a project that's in existence. And we will go through it and share with them, you know, what we bring to the table too. And to try and clarify to them that, you know, it's not all smoke and mirrors. I mean, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into this. And when they see a binder, you know, that's 3 inches thick, and this is a project we've been working on, this is the kind of information that we will be providing, and we can guide you and walk you through all of it. And we just start, you know, getting them kind of familiar with the process, and maybe some of the terminologies, because we use the term elevations. And, you know, my clients are always thinking that it has to do with, you know, topography outside. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Elevations, interior elevations, you know, cabinetry, etc. So we find that to be a little bit clear, to you know, visually show them, you know, they love visuals. It kind of helps too, and it opens them up to actually ask us questions. Well, so how do you work? And I saw somebody posted, you know, would it be better to have a questionnaire, you know, to have them fill out? Well, you know, most clients are like, yeah, I'll do that later, but I just want to talk to you for a few minutes. So, you know, you can, it's a little bit more of a struggle to get the answers out of them, but it also leaves them lots of room and time to ask you, you know, as well, because we're a little bit of a mystery to them, I find. So, you know, it's
100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to, one of the things, and again, you guys have been doing this for a really long time, so it's like second nature. The thing to really remember is, like, your clients have no idea how much work goes into what you do. No idea. So I think, you know, one of the things we've talked about, Kathleen, and, you know, sharing that binder, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about some of the other materials you've created that really document all of the work that goes in that they don't even see, you know, that happens behind the scenes. I also wanted to comment on the question that came through about the questionnaire. You know, I think it's valuable to have like a general like questionnaire, maybe 4 or 5 questions. I have one that people have to fill out when they schedule a discovery call with me. And the reason I do that is to just kind of get a you know, a snapshot of where people are at, but it also helps me with data collection, right? So now 2 years into this, like, I have so much information that I can use from a marketing standpoint, right? Because one of my questions is, well, what are, you know, 1 to 3 of your biggest challenges you're facing in your business? So, you know, I tend to see the same answers over and over again, right? So that's information for me from a marketing perspective. However, I do think, as Kathleen said, body language is something you really want to be paying attention to, because I wish I could remember the percentages, but I feel like it's almost like 80% of communication is nonverbal. So if you are not there with the client posing questions, I think you're missing a lot of cues, you know, in terms of, is this person right for you or not? How do you feel about that, Kathleen?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, just, I mean, just the way that they, you know, approach us, and, you know, a totally different thing on the phone or through a questionnaire. We actually reserve questionnaires for later when it comes to things like plumbing, appliances, you know, all these different questions. We've developed questionnaires that we send out to them and say, okay, here's your homework. These are questions that you're going to have to answer at some point. So I'm going to forward it to you now. And this is, of course, after we've been engaged in the project, hired on. But it, again, lets them have some time to talk about it between all the parties involved. And so questionnaires like that have really, really helped us. Instead of us moving forward, selecting things and then presenting to them, and they go, well, no, actually, we always wanted to have a single handle faucet in all the kids' rooms. You know, so if you send them the questionnaires, it helps save you some time and gives them some homework, and in feeling, you know, very much involved, you know, in what's going on, decisions. So
yeah, absolutely. So I just saw a question come through. Someone had a question about what my 5 questions are. Now, I don't know how relevant these are going to be for designers, but my questions are: tell me a little bit about where you are now with your business or career. What are 1 to 3 of your biggest challenges? What are 1 to 3 goals you have for your business or career? What does success mean to you? And have you worked with a consultant or a coach in the past, and what was that experience? If yes, what was that experience like for you? So I do think adapting that last question to find out if people have worked with a designer before, and if yes, what that experience was like, that's going to give you a lot of information. Mm-hmm. But Kathleen, one of the things that was so exciting for me, again, as a coach to see is, when I developed this exercise, it really was about creating this set criteria and then figuring out, okay, yes, what are the questions that I can pose to a client, in a first meeting to kind of figure out if they fit. But you really took it to another level. You have taken it to the point of, listen, even an ideal client doesn't know how to continue to behave like an ideal client once they're in the process. So we talked about earlier, the relationship starts off great, but then it starts to deteriorate. So can you talk a little bit about how you've taken this exercise to the next level and have started to train your clients to be ideal?
Sure. So obviously, as I had mentioned before, a lot of clients don't quite understand what the process and procedures are. And, we can write all day long and put on our website that this is our process. But when it really comes down to it, they don't know what's the next step. Okay, great. We love you. We're hiring you. And now what do we do? So we realized that what we wanted to, what we even wanted to figure out ourselves was, how are we going to be able to explain to them what the actual process is and the procedures that we go through. We know exactly where we're going to start. We know what needs to be decided first. We know what we're going to do, and we do it the same method every single project. And we thought, what, maybe we really need to write this down and share this with them so they understand, they can kind of stay on the same page with us and also feel that they're very, very much connected and very integral part of this project, and things don't move forward without them. So we sat down and we literally took, what do we do now? We're hired. What's the very first thing we always do? And it took us a good day and a half to actually write out this process and procedures. And it was an eye opener for us. We were like, darn, we do an awful lot of work that I don't think the client has any clue. So it was really, really great for us. And we now have included it and share that with the clients, even in the interview process, to say, this is how you're involved. This is when you're involved. We want to keep things rolling. We have a process. We love organization. And we're going to help you along on letting you know what the next decisions are. And, a lot of them speak of, oh my God, they need the decision tomorrow. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, we've been telling you, you got to make these decisions. So this sheet actually is a checklist, actually, and it has been incredibly helpful because, again, as Ginna said, we realized that we may initially get what we consider an ideal client, but in order to keep them being that ideal client, it was our responsibility to teach them and keep them in line. So this process and procedure sheet, which goes through phases, describes the scope of work, but in a lot more detail, but not so complicated they can't understand. And everybody loves a checklist. Everybody loves to check something off. So it made sense to them, and it's been working real well for us. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, one of the things that I think is so important that this checklist does for you, like you mentioned, like, this is how you're going to be involved. So it's also expressing like what your expectations are for your client. They have expectations for you, but I find that with many people, they have a really hard time communicating expectations, whether it's with employees or, with a client. But what actually happens when those expectations are clearly defined, everyone feels more comfortable. Everyone feels at ease. They know what is expected. They know what's coming next. What I feel like I remember you saying there was another benefit that came from creating this checklist.
Well, I know that it was something that we looked at and said, okay, we are doing these proposals. We've been doing the same kind of proposal. And I would say almost, I feel like we were guessing at how much we should charge somebody.
Oh, wow. Right.
So what we did was we took this checklist and we literally put hours against what we felt, and it was all the team because Daniela, who does all my architecture work and my interior design work with me, she does a lot of the drawings. We keep track of time. Of course, it's the way we bill and invoice, but let's sit down and really figure out how many hours we think it takes. So we did that because we had 3 brand new projects coming up that we had to do proposals for. And since this checklist got done, we sat down and put the hours. We talked about it and we were blown away with, oh my goodness, we have been leaving an awful lot on the table. So it ended up helping us really reformulate proposals, fees, and to realize that, we were being a lot more we needed to be more realistic about, what we were doing and how much time. And I tell you, it has not been a struggle with clients. They've been very receptive because they have this more information, than this. I mean, I do a very short proposal. It's pretty much a 1-pager. And when they have that backup paperwork and we walk them through it, we haven't had any real struggles with that. Anybody doing that fee negotiation thing.
Right.
So
That's the point.
Big. It was big.
That's the point I remember you sharing about, even though you raised your fees as a result of this exercise, you weren't getting pushback because
Right.
it's so detailed and clear about all the work that goes into all your projects.
Right.
So we have a few minutes left and I'd love to open this up to more questions. And I did see a question from Molly, and Kathleen, maybe you can take this one. If it's the wrong client, do you bid high and hope they don't sign on? Or do you just not follow up? Or do you tell them you're too busy or I'm not the right designer? I think this needs to be done tactfully or it could harm your reputation. So how do you handle when someone's not a right fit?
I respectfully decline. We probably will put a little bit of, we're a little busy right now. We might have to do a few white lies so that we don't hurt anybody's feeling and of course our reputation. But, when it's not a good fit, there have been definitely moments when I've actually said, you know what, I think we're probably not the right firm for you. You're wanting us to do things. In fact, we had to actually let a client go. I actually had to fire a client who was just expecting us to do some things that was just not part of how we do. They were rewriting, our policies and procedures. And so we very respectfully said, you're just asking us to do things that we don't do, and we don't believe in doing things this way. And, I just think we're not the greatest fit for you. But I think being honest, I think that's just what you got to do. And the sooner you do it, the better. Don't wait. Don't take on, a project that you are really like, I just don't know. Maybe it will be better. It's usually not ever going to get better. And I've been guilty of it myself. So, yeah, you just got to be honest and be respectful about it. And they'll understand. And sometimes I'll actually refer somebody else that I know might be a good fit. I have no problem in passing on a project, and hope that it doesn't turn out to be a bad thing for them if they take it on. But
Right. No, that's great advice. Someone also asked about our contact information and how they can find us. I want to let everybody know I am going to send out a follow-up email after this. Also with some discount codes and offers if you guys have any interest in finding out more about the work I do. But Kathleen, where can everybody find you? What's the best way for them to find you?
Well, obviously the website, or just give me a call. 904-247-5408, or kmhdesigninc.com. And we have a link right on there to KMH Home, which is our retail shop. But yeah, it should be easy enough to find us.
What about your Instagram handle?
Oh yeah, KMH Design. So sorry. Just KMH Design.
Yeah. So same for me, it's my name, GinnaChristensen.com is my website. My Instagram is the same. As I said, you'll be receiving an email from me as well. So I'll have some additional ways you can reach out if you'd like to. But I want to thank you so much, Kathleen, for sharing the stage here with me today and your enormous wisdom with everyone here today. It's been such a pleasure to get to work with you and to talk about, the subject of, again, attracting and creating your ideal client.
Thank you, Ginna. It's been a pleasure, and sorry about the whole, technical difficulty.
We made it. We made it
Yeah,
through.
I know.
We made it through. And thank you, everybody who's
Thank
here watching. We hope that you got a lot out of this and that you're going to look at your clients and interviewing your clients differently. Yes, the D&D building will be sending out a recording. And I will probably be sending out a link to the recording as well, just in case you miss it. Okay. So thank you again to everyone. Thank you to the D&D building and Jared for putting this together, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.